Okay, so hello, a couple of introductions. My name is Hillary. No, it is not Clinton. No, I don't care how Bill is. And no, I'm not running for president, although I would probably do a better job. I was asked by a new friend of mine to make this video and go on record and speak publicly for the first time about what happened to me and more particularly to my son, Solon. This is what he looked like at the time. Menacing little creature, wasn't he? 6 years ago, because Solon is bipolar, he was placed in Liberty Elementary on Atwater in Port Charlotte because supposedly they had the program to deal with his behavioral and emotional problems. I'm not going to sit here and say my kid was the perfect child. He was not. That's why he was at Liberty Elementary. Okay? On this particular day, Solon had a temper tantrum at school, which I was later told lasted for 2 hours. Now, during this 2-hour span of time, nobody bothered to call me. Now, the way the classroom that he was in was set up was there were at least 2 teachers plus teachers' aides. There were 2 telephones in the classroom, and everyone wore 2-way radios. Again, nobody bothered to call me. Towards the end of this 2-hour period of time, after the teachers had already followed all of their protocols, Solon was alone in the classroom. It was he, a teacher, I believe a teacher's aide, and the school resource officer. Now, at this point in time, he had gone into shutdown. He was not reacting outwardly. He was not responding to anyone's directions. He was sitting, as I said, alone in the classroom at his desk. Now, he had the leg of the desk was resting on top of his foot, and he was laying his head down on the desk with his arms folded, and he was pressing down on the desk. Now, common sense would tell you that this is not a life-threatening situation. It was not going to cause any kind of permanent or debilitating injury. He was not damaging school property. No one was in danger. No one was being threatened. The school resource officer told him to immediately stop what he was doing, and he did not. So, she felt it necessary to tackle my 4-foot-tall, 80-pound child to the ground from his desk, like he was an adult felon, handcuff him, and drag him out of school, past all the other students, where he was then placed into a squad car and driven to Charlotte Behavioral Center and Baker acted. Now, at that point in time, once the school resource officer had in effect kidnapped my child and no one notified me, the school finally decided to pick up the phone and give me a call. I immediately dropped what I was doing, rushed to Charlotte Behavioral Center, where I found, again, this menacing creature on a bench, handcuffed with his arms behind his back, screaming in absolute terror. While right next to him was an orderly for the hospital and the jackbooted thug who arrested him. She stood about 5 foot tall and maybe weighed 100 pounds, so I can see where perhaps she felt intimidated by this, poor creature. Again, my son was 9 years old. I found him screaming in terror. I walked into the lobby and told the officer that I was there and could handle the situation and she could remove the handcuffs. Now, of course, this was my first and biggest mistake. You are not allowed to tell our overlords anything. I was immediately told that I was not in charge, she was in charge, and that if I didn't like the fact that she was in charge, she would have me trespass to the property so that I could not even visit with my son, and she would have me arrested. So, I had to change my tone and beg her, please, ma'am, would you please take the handcuffs off my poor screaming little boy? Can't you see how terrified he is? He's not going to be any danger to you. Please, ma'am, please, could you take the handcuffs off my son? Once she was satisfied that I had licked her boots sufficiently, she did remove the handcuffs. I was told that because she Baker acted my child, that I had basically been stripped of my parental rights, and at that point in time, he was kidnapped by the state. I had to sign him into Charlotte Behavioral. All of those papers were signed under duress. And I can get those copies. This incident is also mentioned in the IEP reports for my child through the Charlotte County school system. And because she did technically arrest and Baker Act him, this school resource officer did have to write a report. So there is a report somewhere on file with the Sheriff's Department, maybe. I don't remember the officer's name, but at the time I did try to file a complaint because I felt that she went a little above and beyond. Again, my 4-foot-tall, 80-pound, 9-year-old child was left with a welt on his forehead. He had rug burn on both his knees, and he had cuts and welts in his wrists where she had put the handcuffs on so tightly that it actually welted up his wrists. The police department, which at that point in time was run by the sheriff of Rottingham, known as Cameron, refused to take a complaint from me, saying that the officer acted within her training and dictates. So sometimes even if you want to speak up and say something, they're just not going to listen to you. Now I'm telling this story because I want people to understand that this does not just happen in big cities. This is not a new phenomenon. There are plenty of good cops out there, I'm sure. They are compartmentalized. They are forced to go along to get along and not lose their pensions. And although they may have gone in with good intentions, because they do not cross that thin blue line, they are part of the problem. And the biggest problem is this: there are too many people on power trips. They were the bullies in high school, folks, that now run around under the authority of law, that think they have extra rights because they have a badge. Badges do not grant extra rights. You know, and the problem here, especially in Charlotte County, Florida, where I live, where I was born and raised, where I have raised my family, is that 30 years ago, when I was 10 years old, Officer Friendly walked the neighborhood and built relationships with the people. Now it's Officer Ava Braun who is running around making sure you understand that you are the wage slave, and that if their encounter with you can't generate some kind of revenue, you're not worth it. Think about this, folks. It takes 8 of them to pull over the little old lady in her early hundreds for not coming to a complete stop at the corner of Olean and Easy. But when 12-year-old little boy Devin gets hit on his bicycle by a hit-and-run driver who has enough time, by the way, to come back and survey the scene 2 to 3 times, where are the police? There is a problem here. The problem is accountability. That's what needs to be brought in. That's pretty much all I've got to say. Thanks for your time.